Bashar al-Assad's abrupt exit after 50 years of his family's rule marks a monumental shift. Streets in Damascus erupted in celebration at the news, but the jubilation was short-lived. Assad's departure leaves Syria without a clear leader, and the country's highly polarized landscape is bracing for a fierce power struggle. With President Bashar al-Assad fleeing to Moscow after a lightning rebel offensive, the vacuum left behind has everyone asking, how did Syria get here? And more importantly, what's next? Before continuing, please consider subscribing to the channel, as it really helps a small channel like ours go a long way. Syria gained independence from France in 1946, but its journey was filled with struggles. Years of political unrest resulted in a coup placing Hafez al-Assad on the throne in 1970. Through personality cults and authoritarian measures, the family was able to suppress any kind of revolts against them. Hafez's reign set the stage for what we see today. He ensured that power remained with the Alawite minority and the Sunni majority was pushed aside. His policies instilled anger that spread throughout the country over the years. This left the Syrian society fractured. By the time Bashar al-Assad took over, the country was struggling ethically, economically, and most important, politically. Then came 2011, when the Arab Spring swept the Middle Eastern countries. Dictators started falling one by one. It began from Tunisia, then Egypt, and then Syria was ready to join the bandwagon. But Bashar al-Assad was not going down without a fight, as he knew giving up was not an option. The demonstrators were looking for democracy, but the situation soon escalated into something horrific. With anti-Assad groups ganging up against him, the chaos soon attracted foreign intervention, essentially turning Syria into the proxy battleground that we see today. By 2012, the country was in a full-scale civil war. In the turbulence, extreme groups, including ISIS, benefited immensely. By 2014, ISIS had gained control over large parts of Iraq and Syria, which allowed them set up a caliphate. The nature of the conflict was taken to a completely new, terrifying level. While the US and its allies attempted to thwart ISIS through airstrikes, Russia and Iran were focused on strengthening Assad. The war had now become a multi-front nightmare. An estimated 10 to 13 million Syrians have been displaced, with over 3 million currently living in Turkey. Europe has also borne some of the burden, but countries like Germany, Austria, and Sweden are now tightening their asylum policies. Austria, for instance, plans to deport 40,000 Syrian refugees. Repatriation, however, is easier said than done. Syria's infrastructure is in ruins, and reconstruction will require massive international investment. The World Bank estimates the cost at $1.4 billion, a staggering figure that will take years, if not decades, to mobilize. Meanwhile, Turkey and the EU are negotiating reconstruction plans, but progress is slow. In order to understand why the war is so complicated, we need to look at the players. On one side is Russia and Iran, who are supporting Bashar al-Assad. They provide him with political support, Iranian ground forces, and Russian air power. In combination, these forces had greatly assisted Assad in retaking most of the country. On the other side are the Syrian opposition forces, which include a mix of democratic groups, extremists, and everything in between. The US has supported the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, which earlier managed to defeat ISIS. However, this alliance is shaky at best. And then there's Turkey that backs the Syrian National Army, SNA. Turkey perceives the Kurdish forces to be a threat to its security. Then there is HTS, or Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and its leader Mohammed al-Jolani, formerly affiliated with al-Qaeda. With so many players and their diverse interests, it seems near impossible to find a solution. Fast forward to today, and Bashar al-Assad has resigned after a weeks-long assault by Turkey and US-backed SNA and SDF. Losing the battle against the lightning attack by rebel forces, he had to take shelter in Moscow. This also marks the end of 50-year reign of the Assad dynasty over Syria. While some were rejoicing on the streets, others still question what is to come. Now the country is composed of regions that are split based on the different groups. The United States-aided SDF and the Turkish-aided SNA forces are already seen fighting each other. On the other hand, Russia seems to be pulling back from its military installments, which were a key in protecting its interests in Middle East as well as Africa. So, as one tale seems to come to an end, another one which is more gruesome in nature will play out. Who fills this vacuum will determine not just Syria's future, but also the wider geopolitical dynamics of the Middle East. Russia's rapid withdrawal from key military bases, such as the airbase in Kobani, adds another layer of instability. Moscow appears unwilling to get caught in the middle of escalating rebel infighting. But its retreat raises questions about the fate of its prized Mediterranean assets, the Tartus naval facility and Khmeimim air base. Losing these strongholds would be a significant blow to Russian influence in the region. The fall of Assad has not united Syria. Instead, rebel factions are splintering, each fighting for territory and power. Among them, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, has emerged as the dominant force. They control major cities like Aleppo, Hama, and Idlib, as well as the entire coastline. Yet HTS's history is as complicated as Syria itself. Once affiliated with al-Qaeda, its leader Abu Muhammad al-Julani has tried to rebrand HTS as a moderate opposition force, a Syrian version of Ukraine's Zelensky. These factions, while ostensibly aligned against Assad, have divergent goals. The SFA seeks to establish a secular government, while HTS leans toward implementing Sharia law. And that's just the beginning. The ethnic and religious patchwork of Syria means any attempt at nation-building will face enormous hurdles. A secular state might seem like the logical solution, but in the Middle East, secularism carries a different connotation. For many Syrians, secular rule is synonymous with Assad's tyranny. As a result, some view Islamism as the only path to freedom. HTS's leadership has proposed a government rooted in Sharia law, but even they admit it's a work in progress. The Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, face their own set of challenges. Backed by the United States, the SDF has been instrumental in fighting ISIS and securing parts of northern Syria. However, their ties to the PKK, Kurdistan Workers' Party, make them a target for Turkey. Ankara considers the PKK a terrorist organization and has made it clear that the SDF's links to the group are unacceptable.
However, any PKK extension in Syria cannot be considered a legitimate partner to engage with any talks in Syria because they are filled with international terrorist fighters among their ranks.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, himself of Kurdish descent, has warned that the SDF has no place in Syria's future unless it severs these ties. Adding to their woes, the SDF lacks local support in many of the areas it controls. Much of the population in these territories is Arab, and they view the SDF as a foreign imposition. Recent protests have seen Arab communities tear down PKK billboards, only to face violent crackdowns from SDF forces. Without significant reform, the SDF risks losing both external and internal support. If the SDF refuses to cut ties with the PKK, another war seems inevitable. Turkey has already pushed HTS to redirect its forces northward to weaken the SDF. Such a move could ignite a full-blown conflict between HTS, the SNA, and the SDF. Without US support, which could dwindle if Donald Trump returns to the White House, the SDF would likely be overrun. However, this doesn't mean the end of Kurdish aspirations. Turkey has a cooperative relationship with Iraqi Kurdistan and could potentially foster a similar dynamic with a reformed Syrian Kurdish entity. The key is severing ties with the PKK, a non-negotiable for Ankara. Just when the world thought ISIS was a thing of the past, its shadow looms large once more. The United States has ramped up efforts to bomb ISIS infrastructure, but the group is far from defeated. UAE Secretary of State Antony Blinken has warned of ISIS's attempts to regroup, though critics argue these efforts are more about justifying continued American military presence in Syria. Assad's loyalists may have fled, but their influence could resurface in dangerous ways. Defected soldiers and officers, now blending into civilian populations, have the expertise and connections to form new militant groups. This is eerily reminiscent of how ISIS emerged from the ashes of Saddam Hussein's regime in Iraq. Videos already show piles of discarded uniforms and weapons near the Iraqi border, a chilling reminder of what could come next. The international community's role is pivotal. Will they step in to prevent another war, or will they turn a blind eye as Syria spirals into chaos once more? Only time will tell, but one thing is clear. The world cannot afford to ignore what happens next in Syria. If you want to see more explanatory videos like this, let us know in the comments section below. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel.